Kate had her nose in the air like a bloodhound. It smells like a bakery, a pizzeria, and a cookout all at once. That's another great thing about the Institute, said Jackson. The helpers prepare wonderful meals, and you can eat anything you want, and as much as you want too. Just go up and tell them what you'd like. Don't be offended if they don't say anything. Helpers aren't supposed to talk to you unless you ask them a question. Pretty soon, you don't even notice them. I remember when I was a student, I liked to play tricks on them. Nothing they could do about it, you see, because no rule said I couldn't. But now, I hardly pay attention to them, except to keep them in line. It sounds like there are no rules here at all, Sticky said. That's true, George, said Jilson. Virtually none. In fact, you can wear whatever you want just so long as you have on trousers, shoes, and a shirt. You can bathe as often as you like, or not at all, provided you're clean every day in class. You can eat whatever and whenever you want, so long as it's during meal hours in the cafeteria. You're allowed to keep the lights on in your rooms as late as you wish until 10 o'clock each night. And you can go wherever you want around the Institute as long as you keep to the paths and the yellow-tiled corridors. Did that sound like there are no rules, or did that sound like there are a bunch of rules? Actually, Renee observed, those all sound like rules. Jackson rolled his icy blue eyes. This is your first day, so I don't expect you to know much, Renard. But this is one of the rules of life you'll learn at the Institute. Many things that sound like rules aren't actually rules, and it always sounds as if there are more rules than there actually are. That sounds like 2 rules I'll learn, Renee said. My point exactly. Now come along, everybody. We need to hurry. You're to join the other new arrivals for Mr. Curtin's welcome speech. Constance, stop dawdling. You too, George, hustle it up. Would you mind calling me Sticky? The boy asked, hustling up. Is Sticky your real name? Asked Jackson. It's what everybody calls me, Sticky replies. But is it official? Is there an official document somewhere that declares Sticky your real name? No. Well, if it isn't official, then it can't be real, now can it? Sticky just stared. Good boy, George, said Jackson, leading them back to the classrooms. Beware the Gemini. Sean, you got to quit going on. You got to stay on mute. The children were shown into an ordinary classroom where sunlight streamed through the windows. The desks sat empty, and an executive waited to speak with Jackson and Jilson. As the children chose their seats, the executives held a private discussion. Then Jilson and the other executive hurried out. Shouldn't be long, Jackson told the children. The other group's finishing their tour, and apparently our recruiters have brought in some unexpected new arrivals. They're being admitted right now, so we'll start in a few minutes late. He stepped out of the room. Then he stepped back in. Okay? Okay, the children replied. Jackson shook his head scornfully and withdrew. He's a sweetheart, Kate said. I don't know how you can joke, said Sticky. My stomach is all in knots. Renee's stomach felt much the same. Did you hear what Jilson said about the mine shafts? You bet I did, Kate said. It makes no sense. Why set traps and then warn us about them? They don't want us to leave the paths, Renee speculated. And if we do, they want to know it. They want to catch us. Kate's blue eyes shone with excitement. If that's true, there might be traps everywhere. You two aren't helping my stomach, Sticky said. Soon the door swung open and a dozen other new arrivals entered, escorted by several executives and a pair of men wearing fine suits and 2 watches apiece. They followed a flurry of introductions, desk choosing, and general mayhem, during which the executives watched the children very intently, as if they didn't quite trust them not to bolt from the room or start a brawl. Renee was painfully aware of their eyes upon him. He already felt conspicuous. But new kids always felt conspicuous, he reminded himself, and so he smiled and nodded, trying hard to seem as happy and eager as the other newcomers. His fellow members of the mysterious Benedict Society were making the same attempt, some with less success than others. Kate smiled charmingly. Sticky managed a grimace that resembled a smile, though it also resembled the expression you might wear in a sandstorm. Constance nodded a few times in a friendly way until the nodding grew sleepy and her eyelids drooped. Renee nudged her. Constance jerked her head upright and blinked in surprise as if she didn't quite know where she was. As it happened, this was exactly how a couple of the other newcomers looked. A hefty bell-shaped girl and a wiry boy sitting near the front. Both wore dazed expressions and ill-fitting clothes. Hers were too small, his too large. And both had wet hair from recent baths. Except for Constance, they were the only children who didn't seem happy and excited. Perhaps they were just sleepy. Though you would have thought fresh baths and the dread of a new school would have gotten them wide awake. Renee saw one of the men in suits glance at the dazed-looking children, giving them a little wink and a friendly smile, and suddenly it hit him. Recruiters. Jackson had said that must be what the Institute Scouts were called, which probably meant that the unexpected new arrivals Jackson had mentioned were, could it be? Could these kids really have been kidnapped? And they just sat there looking sleepy? That seems unlikely, Renee thought. He must be missing something. And yet, Renee's attention was drawn away. The commotion was dying down. Jilson had taken her place at the front, apparently waiting for a cue from Jackson, who stood in the doorway. Jackson nodded and Jilson raised her hands for silence. A hush fell over the room. Then, in a booming voice, Jilson announced, "And now, everyone, it is our greatest pleasure to introduce you to the esteemed founder, the president and principal of our beloved institute, Mr. Ladropthia Curtin." Everyone watched the door with anxious eyes. For a long, expectant pause, they heard nothing except a sort of distant whine. But the whine grew louder by the moment, giving way to a tremendous grind and screech, as of a car changing gears and spinning its tires. And into the room shot a man in a motorized wheelchair, moving so quickly and with such recklessness that every child in the room scooted back in fear of being struck. Mr. Curtin had perfect control of his chair, however, and he raced around the rows. He expertly dodged the children's feet and the sharp corners of the desks, smiling as he went. The wheelchair was unlike any they'd ever seen. It had 4 evenly spaced wheels, like a cart, with button controls on the armrests and pedal controls beneath each foot. Mr. Curtin was snugged into the padded chair with a seatbelt across his chest and lap, and the chair rolled so quickly that his thick white hair flew back from his head. He wore large round glasses with silver reflective lenses so that his eyes couldn't be seen. His cheeks and chin were reddened by a recent shave, and his nose was large and lumpy like a vegetable. His entrance would have been a shocking sight for any child, but it was far worse for those of the mysterious Benedict Society. That nose, so much like a vegetable, and that hair so thick and white, would have been enough to give them a start, but that suit he wore, that green plaid suit, was the clincher. With faces aghast, the 4 children gaped at the man and at one another, for they saw at once that Mr. Curtin was Mr. Benedict himself. Bum, bum, bum. We're stopping right there. Like and subscribe.